Everyone thinks snow and high altitude and skiing. They don't think wine can grow out here, but I think we're starting to show that we can make some pretty good stuff.
Welcome to another episode of the Culinary 360 podcast. I'm Chef Luke.
I'm Chef Robert.
And I'm Chef Ryan.
And on today's episode, we'll be chatting with Keenan High from Colterris Winery in beautiful Palisades, Colorado. We'll learn about their history, unique growing region, some fascinating stories around the wine industry and their journey through it, as well as some of the fun and exciting projects they have on the horizon. We might even have a glass or two of wine while we do it. I'm really looking forward to it, so let's jump right in. Well, Keenan, thanks so much for joining us. Welcome to the Culinary 360 podcast. We're super excited to have you.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. I'm excited.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Product placement.
So a little precursor to what we'll be talking about today.
Mm-hmm.
Keenan, so give us a little bit of background on who you are, what you do, where you're at, so forth.
Yeah, so my name is Keenan High. I'm the son of the owners, Scott and Teresa High, here at Colterris Wines up in Palisade, Colorado. We are Colorado's largest estate-grown winery, so estate-grown, bottled, and produced, which means that we do everything on our winery. So we grow all the grapes that go into our wines, we produce all the wines at our winery, and we bottle it all. To be able to say estate grown, bottled, and produced on the back of the bottle, we have to do each of those things. So we're very Colorado proud and hopefully a big player in the Colorado wine industry that is trying to show that Colorado wines can make world-class wines.
At least from my experience growing up and working here in the industry in Colorado, I think there's sort of a stigma about, non-Californian wines, non-French wines, non-European wines, whatever, that, they can't stand up to everything else.
Yeah.
And I am here to tell you that I am a fan. This is a very good Cabernet Sauvignon. I will drink this a lot.
Thank you. I think I see that a little bit. Like I hear that every now and then in the industry. Colorado may be sometimes viewed as the poor kid on the block when it comes to American wines or wines in general with those. But I mean, look at what Napa and Sonoma was 50, 60 years ago as compared to French wines, compared to European wines. It was the Americans don't know how to make wine, but now look at them. Mm-hmm. So I think that we're all growing at least faster in the American wine industry. Like look at Washington, Oregon, Texas starting to get some now. We get a little bit in Virginia. Different wine regions in America are starting to grow. And mm-hmm. I think that we're hoping to show that Colorado can do the same. And it's a little bit of a shock to some people because everyone thinks snow and high altitude and skiing, they don't think wine can grow out here. But I think we're starting to show that we can make some pretty good stuff.
Are you at a similar elevation or parallel as another wine growing region in the world?
I would say we're similar to Bordeaux, honestly, similar to France.
Okay.
Similar wines tend to grow here because we're really in a dry, arid climate with a high elevation, which means that we see that those deeper, bolder reds tend to thrive a little bit more or produce a little bit better wines out here, which is totally fine with us. That's why we're a Bordeaux-style winery. Like you said, you're having the Cabernet Sauvignon over there, Luke, and mm-hmm. Ryan's having the Sauvignon Blanc. Those are two Bordeaux-known wines, and we're starting to see that those can really take off here. So we kind of lean into that a little bit more. High altitude means we're going to get intense UV sunlight. So we're going to see that the skins on our grapes tend to be a little bit thicker, Mother Nature's attempt to protect the seed on the inside. So thicker skins means bolder reds, deeper flavors, intense colors. And we like to lean into that.
Yeah. So I was up there, it was a little bit ago, but Jason, a colleague of mine, came up, took a little bit of a tour of the facility. And I was blown away. I loved the area. You can see the river kind of banks around part of the vineyard. We got to see all the actual wine making, resources you guys have, all the equipment, storage, some underground storage. I mean, it was very impressive. But when I was up there, I was talking to your mom and your dad. I was sort of taken by some of the naming of stuff, right? So Colterris has a special name or is a special meaning. Then the wine that I was drinking then was called Colorado.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about some of this naming stuff.
Yeah, so Colterris, COL, is short for Colorado, and terris is like terra, or Latin for earth or land, or really means from the land. So our name really means from the Colorado land. So we are very Colorado proud and all that. Again, being a state grown, we do want to show what Colorado does. So it's literally in our name. And then with Colorado, it's a very fun name that it's Colorado Deaux. So like Bordeaux, but Colorado.
Yeah.
So it's really our Bordeaux blend of Bordeaux grapes. So Cabernet Sauvignon, Malbec, Merlot, Petit Verdot, that are all found in Bordeaux. And we made our Bordeaux blend or style out of those grapes that we grow. So it's a Colorado. So we have a little bit of fun with some of those things, showing that wine doesn't always have to be serious all the time, but we want to make seriously good wine. That's one of our biggest things.
Yeah, no, I thought that was super cool. And that wine, by the way, was phenomenal. Like, it was so good.
And I think that Colorado, it just won a double gold in the San Francisco International Wine Competition.
Oh, congratulations.
Oh, awesome.
I always kind of explain double gold a little bit because double gold means that every judge in the competition gave it a gold.
Wow.
It's like a unanimous All-American to a degree, which it's tough to do. So we're proud to be able to say that it's the San Francisco International Wine Competition. So we're going up against wines all over the world in the similar price range, which for that one, I believe is $75 range. And it's red blends, which talk about a big category.
I bet, yeah.
So we're very proud to be able to bring that back home to Colorado and show that, again, we're hopefully making amazing wines here.
Good for you guys. That's so cool. What a good story.
Thank you.
So I was looking at the website and I saw that you've got, I think it's 75 acres total that you've got planted, but it looks like some of the vineyards are broken up. And so you'll have different grape varietals planted in multiple places. Is that so that you're catching different microclimates for blending, or what's the thought behind that?
Two sides to that one. The first one is that we have about 78 acres of grapes planted right now, but that has actually just changed. So it's about 80 now. We have about 200 acres total for our facilities. We also grow peaches, which we can get into that in a minute. We actually have two separate major locations where we have our land. So there's the Colterris Winery location, which is down right next to the Colorado River at about 4,500 feet or 4,700 feet. And that's where we have our two major vineyard sites in the Cliffside Vineyard and the Riverside Vineyard. And then we have the Vinelands Vineyard down there. That area being really close to the river, a little bit more in a canyon, helps with that mesoclimate of less intense sunlight next to a cliff, next to a river. You get more water. It's going to help those vines thrive a little bit. So we tend to see a little bit more Chardonnay, Sauvignon Blanc, and Pinot Gris thrive a little bit better down there. And then up at the Overlook, which is our second major location, we have Teresa's Vineyard, Katie's Vineyard, Two Brothers Vineyard, and Scott's Vineyard. And this is where I am right now. We're at about 4,800 feet here. So another 100 feet or 150 feet in elevation really makes it that we get completely different mesoclimates. Up here, I see more intense sunlight, obviously a little bit closer to the sun there. Like Scott's Vineyard is the highest irrigated hill in Mesa County. So that gives an idea of how truly high up there we are here. But I see the soils here are a little bit more rocky compared down to the winery. It's a little bit more of a clay loam soil down there. While up here, if I start digging 2 feet down for irrigation or anything like that, I start running into softball-sized boulders, and it starts getting really annoying to try to dig.
Yeah.
The soils, the mesoclimates of the different areas, like you were saying, really does play into the wines, especially from an estate-grown perspective. So we kind of get to pick and choose where those wines come from, where they are, what's planted there too, like the new experimental vineyards that we're putting in. We like to think of it as spices in the spice cabinet for our winemakers. Mm-hmm. Instead of just like having one Cabernet Sauvignon, they get Cabernet Sauvignon from Teresa's Vineyard, from Vinelands Vineyard, from Riverside and Cliffside. Uh-huh. So we will go through and we'll harvest those separately, put them in their own tanks, and make wines out of those completely, and then basically blend them together in certain percentages later. It's all Cab Sauv, but it's a little bit more finer detail to it that, again, estate produced, we can do that. Estate grown, we can do that. So it's a little bit more fun and a little bit more attention to detail that we try to have. So it's spot on with those different locations.
Wine blows my mind. Like, it all just starts with the grape, the soil, the atmosphere, the weather. Like, it all just starts there, and then it's how you make it with the, like, procedures of making the wine.
Yeah.
people are like, oh, I want to get into wine. You can't just go back in your garden and grow grapes and be like, oh, I got grapes, now I can make wine. It's like, no, there's a lot of like stuff behind it.
You can make wine, but that doesn't mean it's going to be good. There's different levels of those things.
Right.
It's kind of like Ryan's cooking. You can make food, but it doesn't mean it's going to be good.
Robert, that was the best frozen pizza you ever had. Don't deny it.
Right. No, I like the analogy of the spice cabinet because, obviously the three of us were chefs. We think about, recipes and tweaking recipes and I could even see, when I buy, different spices from different places. Let's say I'm going to King Soopers for spices. Well, then I go to, let's say Safeway and I get basically the same thing, but they are slightly different, even at different ages, they may be different. Right. And being able to recreate a recipe and the exact flavor of that recipe from the first time I made it might not be the exact same amounts of those spices or, whatever the ingredients are that we're playing with.
That's one of the biggest things with our winemakers. It's kind of like their motto right now is time and place.
Mm-hmm.
Those are two major things, especially in wine. It's what happened that year, that spring, if you had a little bit of a colder winter. And then when you harvested it, what happened with the materials, with the crew, how hot was it that day? And then you get the equipment on the inside. What if the equipment isn't running at full capacity? Maybe the water in the water tank didn't get hot enough. There's millions and millions of variables that go into that most of them can be controlled. But at the end of the day, it all comes down to Mother Nature and the grapes. So that's where we try to have as much control over it at the end of the day, the estate thing. But there's only so much you can do. And that's what I think is the beauty in wine.
Yeah.
If there was one perfect way to make a Cab Sauv or to make a Sauvignon Blanc, I think there would be 3 or 4 major companies out there that would be making it. And then that would be it.
Yeah.
But every winery can do their own little fun twist. And that's why there's thousands of them out there. And then you get the history and the aging. And it is truly a beautiful thing at the end of the day that is pretty fun. And I always try to see that, at least my generation, the younger generation, trying to get into it a little bit more. So that's my fun with it.
Colorado is so famous for their like, oh, it's June, here's a snowstorm out of nowhere. And you're like, oh, cool. This is fantastic.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
How do you guys recover from that? Like, what do you do with like that process of like recovery, or like, even if the plants like die, like what's the recovery process of all that stuff?
So with that, I can actually speak to a story that happened 2 years ago. We lost our entire 2021 harvest.
Wow.
We lost the whole thing.
Wow.
The reason why that happened, so those frosts or those types of events don't happen a ton here. If they did happen here, we wouldn't be growing here, right? We wouldn't be able to survive as a company. We wouldn't be able to. Peaches wouldn't be here either. This is a good climate for growing it. It's that dry, arid climate. Doesn't get super cold. We maybe get, I want to say, a foot of snow a year annually. It's nothing crazy, nothing like compared to Denver, but we're 2.5 hours away from Aspen Vale. So we're right next to the mountains. We get those weather patterns. So what happened in 2020 was right after we finished harvesting our Cabernet Sauvignon, we're just kind of getting towards the end of harvest. It's October 17th. We saw that the temperature that day went from about 70 or so degrees that day to 17 degrees that night.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
So a very drastic drop in temperature, especially after we just harvested, means that the water in the cellar, the vines are still alive. They haven't really gone dormant for the winter. That water froze from the inside out. So it's almost a foolproof way to kill a vine, because vines are extremely stubborn. They're very, very strong plants. But that frost, it ended up killing about, I would say, 40-ish% of our Cabernet Sauvignon vines. With the ones that are completely killed, we have to get new plants. We have to get new baby vines from the nurseries, plant them, and then it's about 3 to 4 years before they're back into full production to at least be able to harvest. They're not even in full production from a volume standpoint in 3 or 4 years. They're just producing again.
Beginning.
The other vines that did get impacted, we had to retrain. So we would actually cut off the cane that was above ground that died while the root system below is still alive, still dormant. So we actually had to retrain them from the root system up into the fruiting cane. So they're almost like they got reset back to year 3, year 2. They're not fully producing yet either, but they're producing a little bit more. So that's just from the plant side of things. That doesn't happen that often. I mean, that's maybe something that we've seen maybe 40 or 50 years ago, something similar to that. So it doesn't happen often. But that's just from the plant side of things. Now getting into the business and the wine side of things, we're still recovering from those. For example, our Malbec, we're sold out of it because we didn't get that 2021 harvest to be able to bridge that gap kind of between 2020 and 2022. We just released our 2022 Cabernet Franc. So we've been out of Cabernet Franc for, I want to say, about half a year-ish. And because we're estate grown, we can't buy grapes from elsewhere to make a Cab Franc out of nothing.
Right.
Our white wines, Sauvignon Blanc, Chardonnay, Coral, which is our white Cabernet Sauvignon, Livid, or Malbec Rosé, any white wine style that doesn't have any aging on it, we were sold out of it for a year.
Wow, that's crazy.
And that's difficult to do, right? Because we had all those placements, we had the market share, we had everybody who knew it. And us being humans, if we can't get something, find a replacement.
Right.
So, like, how much wine do you actually get from like a full harvest?
Oh, so that varies every year. I just got that question this morning on a tour. They're like, how many bottles of wine do you get from an acre? Which is, I was like, that's a little bit of a difficult question because it does depend on the vines. The varietal's the biggest factor, really. Like, we can get 4 to 5 tons, usually 4 or 5 tons per red varietal per acre, about 2,000-ish bottles.
Okay.
And then from white wines, we get about 6 or 8 tons, depending on which varietal, like Riesling versus Chardonnay versus Sauvignon Blanc. So we get quite a bit more from the white wine side of things. That's where your average harvest, as you start getting bigger, it really just does depend. Like, I think we were getting around 280-ish tons on average before the frost. So now that number is not as high, but we're hoping to get right back to it very, very quickly. Luckily, a lot of the vines did survive. It's just the Cab Sauv that's it, but the Cab Sauv is the biggest one we have.
I have one more question, then I'll stop with my
Ryan.
I'm like on the guy at the wine tour who's all like, so what is a grape? No.
What does red mean?
So when I have white wine, it tastes white. Is that correct? No.
I would say that's how you think.
So, like, you have all your plants and everything, of course, like in a row. Do some plants produce, I mean, I think this is a foolish question, but to ease my mind, I guess, do some plants produce better? Or like, do some plants actually die during a harvest too, of where you have to replace them? Or are they all pretty consistent?
Throughout a harvest, you don't fully see vines dying per se in the middle of it or in the middle of that year. It's usually based on the maintenance of it. If you do not put enough water on it, if you don't give it the right nutrients and pests, all those things, if you don't maintain it properly, like a plant, if you don't go outside and water your garden every now and then type of thing, that they're going to die. But vines are, for the most part, fairly stubborn. They do stick around for a while. But if you don't take care of it, it may live, but it may not produce what you're expecting. If you don't train it, if you don't thin it, if you don't go for suckers, if you don't cut them and start to get them in their perfect lines that you kind of see on all those pictures where there's no vines sticking out of the side. If you don't do that maintenance, you don't get exactly what you need from a harvest.
Ryan, this is just like your equipment. If you're not like cleaning regularly or putting things away or, fixing things when they need to be fixed, they will stop working.
Oh, you sound like you're in my kitchen. I've had to get all new equipment 4 times already. Sorry, Robert. I told him to bill you, so.
Well, Keenan, you are extremely passionate about wine. It's obvious, like just listening to you talk. So are your parents, for that matter. What got you into it? I mean, outside of your parents obviously being into it, but what got you so excited about wine and so interested in wine?
It's a very fun tradition that I can kind of point back to a couple years ago. So my parents have been in the industry for 45 plus years. They started in distributing. So that means that wineries came to them and kind of, had to tell them what's different about them. Try the wine because you need to sell it, right? You need to distribute it to places, to areas. My mom was a hell of a saleswoman, still is a hell of a saleswoman. And my dad had a passion for wine because when he was 16, his parents owned a liquor store in downtown Denver. So he started reading about it, saying, why is this bottle more expensive than this bottle, right? It's just an easy thing. He started learning about the history, the tradition, all of that into it. And when my dad proposed to my mom, he said, I won't promise you a rose garden, but I will promise you a vineyard. About 2000s, my mom was like, hey, Where the hell's that vineyard?
Still waiting on to cash in this promise.
Yeah. So then it's around that time that we purchased our first piece of land and started Palisade and Colterris. So Colterris was started in about 2008, 2010. So I was maybe 10, 13, 14, 10, around that age when Colterris was started. So it's not like I was born to just have this winery right away. I kind of got to see it start from the ground up.
Yeah.
And that's where a little bit of that passion, like being able to see it physically from the ground, everything, and all the hard work that goes into it, not just from the
right
sitting and tasting wine and doing fun interviews and stuff all the time. It's the being on the ground and being in the tank and pressure washing, doing punch downs, those
hands in the dirt.
Exactly. That type of thing got me into it a little bit. And the payoff at the end of the day of having a really hard day of work, but you get to see it in the bottle, in the glass. You get to see other people enjoying the fruits of your labor and having a good time. It warms my heart. So that's how I kind of have that passion with it. But what got me into it, besides just the hard work and the not having any summers off because I was out in the fields, was my dad started a tradition where every member in our family has a champagne house that is like quote unquote yours to a degree. So a champagne house, to better explain it, is kind of like a brand. So like have we all heard of Moet and Chandon? Dom Perignon. Dom Perignon is the prestige cuvée of Moet and Chandon, a big champagne house, like Nicolas Foyat and Pomme d'Or. It's kind of like the different levels. There's rosés, there's the vintage dated, there's the Blanc de Blanc, so there's Grand Bruts. There's a whole bunch of different things within these houses. So my dad gave us the tradition that each member in our family has a house, and whenever there's a celebration of any sort, you are given a bottle of your champagne. It's like mine is Louis Reuterer. So like my prestige cuvée is Cristal. So when I graduated college, I was given a bottle of Cristal because it's the top of the top. It's a very big moment. The thing is that you're not just given the bottle. It happens to be chilled and there's 6 glasses around it. And really the main point is that you get to share that memory, that wine, that bottle with the people around you, with the family, it's really about sharing that moment. And that to me gave me a little bit of ownership to a degree, a little bit of, hey, Matthew, like my brother's is Moet and Chandon, Matthew. And I said, hey, Matthew, Moet, not as good as Reuterer. Like, come on, mine's always going to be like top dog. A little bit of that type of sibling rivalry to a degree, but that kind of got me inspired enough to read about it, to learn about it. Why is Cristal $400 a bottle? Why does it not have a punt? Why is it really thick? Why does it have a goldish hue? All those things. So I started reading into it, started learning about it, and then why is Moet and Chandon? Why Dom? Why the sparkles? What's the story behind that? So I just started reading about it, and then I kind of got hooked. That history, that passion, that tradition, it's really cool when you start learning about it. But wine is to a degree kind of intimidating because you go into a liquor store or a restaurant, you see that menu and you're kind of like, I don't know what to pick. So it's a little bit of an intimidating thing.
The age barrier too, right? I mean, from a food standpoint, I could sit on the counter and cook food and eat food with my mom, and at whatever age, at 5, 6 years old, and start learning about it there. Whereas with wine, you kind of have to be a little bit farther down the road to really start to really understand it and appreciate it.
Yeah, that always reminds me of one story I get on tours. Like people always ask, when did you first have a glass of wine, right? Like when did you first start having wine? And I always say 21. And then they always laugh a little bit. Like, that's not, you're
like
right.
21 months, maybe.
Wow, Luke.
That's when I was 3 years old is when I technically had my first glass of wine, because my mom had wine with dinner and one night, and she left me down in the basement in Denver, like waiting while she was going and getting food. And she comes back down and her wine glass is empty. And she immediately yelled at my older sister, Katie, who's 16 years older than me. So she would have been about 18, 19 at the time. It's like, Kate, why'd you drink my wine? You could have just asked me. I would have gotten you like a glass so we could enjoy instead of have to go. You don't have to like take it behind my back. And then she's like, Mom, wasn't me. And they were both like, where's Keenan?
He's passed out in the corner.
And then they went and they found me. And I had a big red ring like around my lips, and they're like, "Did you drink it?" And I was like, "No."
No.
And then my sister's favorite part of the story is that my mom was like, "Watch him, don't let him do anything," and like just watch him. And she said that I guess I was like, "I love you, Katie. You're the best sister." So I would say
that's awesome.
That was kind of the first time.
The wine drunk feeling where you love everything.
Yeah.
So let's see. So what are some of your most memorable moments growing up on the winery?
I packed peaches since I was 9 years old. So I guess a little bit with that is that we also own about 60 acres or so of peaches. So we have high country orchards, Palisade Peaches, and we send peaches to King Soopers and Whole Foods all over Colorado. We had the high country orchards before we had Colterris. So we had to pay for Colterris by getting the peaches and getting the farm going. So I started at our little country store at 9 years old. And while my mom was working on the peach side of things and just kind of getting all this stuff together, and one day the news called and it was like, "Hey, we need to interview somebody about the peach season this year." And I remember that morning my mom said, "Don't bother me." And I said, "Okay, no one's going to bother you." So I said, "I'll do the interview," as a 9-year-old kid. And these these news anchors came out and they're like, "Oh, this is gold."
Yeah, I bet they loved it.
And you're drinking a glass of wine.
But so I gave a little interview, and then my mom was like, I said "Hey, let's watch the news tonight." She's like, "You don't want to watch the news." I was like, "No, let's watch the news." And then she saw me on there and flipped and was like, "What did you?" And then she's like, "Actually, the kid might be able to talk a little bit." So she then got me into agri tours. So I did tours around the peaches and a little bit with the country store. And then about 10 years old, 11 years old, I started packaging peaches. So we have an optical sorting system here that has 2 digital cameras that take 7 individual pictures of each peach on our packing line. And then a computer system sorts those peaches into lanes according by size. So that way we can get similar sized peaches in the box. So when you go to the grocery store, you don't see a massive 1 pound peach next to a little golf ball, right?
That's crazy.
It makes it more presentable to the consumer. So it makes it more appealing. Yeah. And we also get a very consistent weight. So that's why peaches are packaged. And I have been running that optical sorting machine with a crew of about 14 to 19 people, depending on the day and how many we have to get done every year since I was 10, 11.
All right. So I may want to come up and check this out. When does peach harvesting start?
So it's usually around July. 4th of July is usually when the first peaches start coming off the trees here in the valley. Our earliest peaches start coming off around June 10th, 11th, or July 10th, 11th, 12th. So about mid-July. We used to have an early variety that would come basically on the 4th of July every year, but we took that variety out because they got a little old and we wanted to plant a little bit of Semillon for some future fun projects. So we're going to put some nice grapes there too. But yeah, or mid-July.
They're supposed to be some of the best peaches in the United States.
Oh, they are.
Just saying.
They are fantastic.
We're not going to get rid of all of our peaches. We definitely going to keep some because of the memories and everything. But yeah, Palisade Peaches are world famous.
They're the best.
It's special, awesome. Yeah.
Do you make a peach wine?
We do not make a peach wine. There are other peach wines in the area that they make fantastic things. I mean, you can make a wine out of any fruit-based product, right? A little bit of sugar, and you can make some good things. We do not. We stick towards the traditional wine end side of things, but it's with everything. And I think it's kind of relating to what you said, Luke, is that quality tends to speak louder than anything else, right? It's the everything. Everybody can see that the quality in the ingredients, the timings, the effort put in, and that's kind of been our MO from the beginning, not just with our products, but with our parties, with our experiences, with the people who come up and enjoy things. We always want to have the highest quality because a little bit is that if you're going to do it, you might as well just do it, right? Do it to the best of your ability. Don't half-ass it to a degree because it almost makes it worse if you miss up on something or you don't have enough food at the party or you don't have enough wine for people to come try when you said come enjoy. So it's just one of those MOs that we're taken into the next level with the museum and the Plum Creek Heritage brand and things like that. So
part of the reason why I was up visiting was because you guys have some projects on the horizon, some really cool things. So yeah, talk about the museum, talk about the new space that you guys are curating right now for not even just wine, but for food and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah. So with the purchase of the Plum Creek Winery, we purchased 2 years ago, December. We acquired that facility, that brand, and we are continuing on with the Plum Creek Heritage brand. That brand is not going to be defunct or anything. We want to show that they were the pioneers of the industry, and we don't want the name to die. That's why we wanted to continue with it and continue moving forward with the Plum Creek Heritage. So I'll get to that in a minute. But we purchased that facility, that winery, and it came with I believe a 4,000 or 5,000 square foot facility, because it's a wine producing facility. And we're taking out all of the equipment on the inside, moving them to another facility so we can have a white wine facility. And inside of that building, we're going to put 16 to 18,000 pieces of wine memorabilia from history. My dad, he got a passion for wine, so he started collecting wine objects, corkscrews, from that age. So this wine museum is basically 50 years of his collecting of wine memorabilia. But what's cool about it is that you can kind of see history through the lens of wine. Like, for example, one of the items is a corkscrew from the London Bridge, made of the iron of the London Bridge that fell down. So you get to tell the story of the London Bridge, the song, you get to bring in why it was torn down, and that the fact there's only 3 of those in the world. We have those types of items, and as long as it relates to wine and history, that's what we're going to put in it. It's under construction right now, and it should be finished, we're hoping, near the end of the year, and then start opening and showing it to be a major attraction to the town of Palisade and something to do in the winter. Because right in the winter here, it's a little cold, and most of the wineries are made for outdoor seating venues. It's a perfect place to be, but we kind of need something to do in the winter.
Great idea. It's a great idea.
Well, and you guys are going to have a kitchen in there as well too, right? Yeah.
Yep. So part of that construction project right now, which is part of the reason why my mom and dad can't be here right now, is that they're actually going and getting the flooring tile pieces and the brick veneer that we want to put on the back of this banquet room. But we're putting in a banquet room that can have, we anticipate right now about 40 to 60-ish people, a large center table, and then maybe some booth banquet type little mini booth things around the edge, and a show kitchen on the other side of it with more advanced materials that you can see it being made right in front of you, and a nice bar, brick veneer, and have winemaker dinners, advanced club parties, vertical tastings with food, and wine museum nights where we show off maybe a certain thing, because we have 1,000 or plus wine menus, and it's the full menu. It's not just the wine list. It's menus that they were serving in 1935 at the Broadmoor or things like that. Like, very interesting, cool little things. And we want to incorporate that with food nights. I mean, wine and food, the greatest pairing ever made.
Right.
Are you guys hiring a chef?
We are currently working on stuff, but
Ryan, why are you asking?
we'll exchange information.
Where are you going with that?
One of the first ideas, at least I had, and we're still, we need to get it built first before we get into any of all of the stuff on the flow with it. But an idea that we had a little bit ago is that if we could bring in guest chefs, celebrity chefs for weekends and winemaker dinners, and maybe be able to show off the chef's abilities and skills and what they do really well, but also pair they get to pick from some of these old wine menus that haven't been there. Some of these businesses don't exist anymore. Some of these old famous hotels, all these things, and maybe pick an item or two off of that menu and try to recreate it to show off skill and to try to bring in some certain things with some pairing. So we have some very fun ideas to pair with that. And you being chefs, what do you guys think of that type of idea?
Well, I'm going to volunteer the 3 of us to come out and do one for you.
We would,
because that would be super fun.
That would be awesome.
We would love that.
So when I was up there visiting with you guys and walking around and we got to see a little bit of the space, some of those wine menus, I mean, and your dad and your mom walking around and I mean, I know your dad's not this old, but he would talk about it like he was there, like when it happened. I'm like, you got to be kidding me, man! But it was super cool though. Just like I was saying before, the passion that you have for what you're doing. Obviously, you get it from your parents, and Scott seems to have that as well. And your mom. I mean, it was so cool just to see everything that's going on up there. Really, it'll be a very neat space.
So. Going back to the peaches, I've got a fig tree in my backyard, and I don't go commercially. So I just walk in the backyard every morning and I touch the figs and find out which ones are the ones I want to pick that day because they feel ripe. With grapes, you're probably checking the brix level and a bunch of grapes, and then you kind of know when to harvest. When do you know how to harvest the peaches on a commercial level?
So the peaches, that's down to experience and time on that one. When they get them into the facilities or their distribution centers, their QA does some bricks testing and does some sugar testing to make sure that they have to meet like a certain level, and they also do a pressure test and all those. I've learned about those Q&A things or those QA things from the years of working with the larger food chains. But when it comes to the peaches off the trees, it's me walking out there and just seeing what they look like, just like what you said. I will walk out and be like, all right, here, this one looks pretty good, and I'll take it home and I'll eat it. But then the other side is that I have to think, what is this peach going to be like 3 or 4 days from now? Not what is it right now? Because I have to get it to the consumer's hands so that it's ready to go when they get it and has the best sugar content, flavor, color, and not being overripe, because no one really likes a super overripe one. Like when you get a group of bananas at the store and then you get them home and they're already brown by the time you get them home, that's a little frustrating, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So it's a little bit of that practice with it, and can't get it right all the time. But I think over the years I've gotten them. I get them pretty close.
Hey guys, 1 second. I apologize. I just got like 7 calls, and I think it's from the shipping company. They're trying to make a delivery. I need to step out just for a second.
Means I can just have more wine, right?
Yeah, let's just drink more.
We'll just have more wine. Are you having the Sauvignon Blanc over there?
I am, yeah.
What do you
it's
think
so
of it?
good. I love it. And I'm when I go to the grocery store or like I go out and get wine, I always just get Sauv Blanc. I just really like it. But I mean, I would have to say my favorite region from getting it is New Zealand.
Mm-hmm. New Zealand's very well known for Sauvignon Blanc. So, I mean, it's very good.
This is fantastic. Like, it's fantastic. Like, is there a place to buy it in Washington?
We can ship. I believe we can ship out there.
So can I just send you, like, go on the website and be like, I'm going to pick the surprise me package, and I'll be like, I want like a rosé, a Chardonnay. Yeah. And then you guys can just pack it up and surprise me with different wines.
It's a good idea. I should tell Kate. Kate walks by here a little bit. She does the wine club, is the head of the wine club. I should tell her that we should have some of those like randomized buttons. Randomize it.
Yeah.
I like this. And then you send out different ones. Like, try this.
Well, there you go, Ryan. With the wine club, you're just going to get something every month that's going to be different. So
that's true too. The only wine club I ever did was Duckhorn.
Oh yeah, no, they have a fantastic wine club. They have a lot of different areas, different styles. They're a larger company now, so they're able to hit a lot of different needs and a lot of different palates. Which is, if you want to be part of a wine club, it's a great one to start.
Another thing that I saw when I was there, just I was thinking about this earlier, but now I'm thinking about it. You guys also do some canned wines, and I would assume like you need, well, obviously you need specific equipment just to be able to do that. How different is the canning line versus the bottling line for all of your wines?
Bottling line is pretty standardized system where we put in, bottles go in one end, we inject a little bit of CO2, which kind of helps displace all the oxygen in the bottle. Then it gets filled, then it goes straight to our capsular, capsule screws on, good to go, and it's done. With the canning line, we actually put in a little bit of liquid nitrogen into the cans. Okay. So the liquid nitrogen expands in the can to actually give it that structure so that we can stack them, you can move them around. And the canning line, way more involved because you have liquid nitrogen going on. You have to get the pumps primed so that they're actually putting the exact right amount in a 7 or a 250 milliliter can. And that one, when we first got that canning line a few years ago, I got home from finals in college, and we were going at, I think it was 21 cans a minute, and just it was all over the place. Wasn't doing great. We were having issues. It's our first time with it, right? It's a brand new, massive piece of equipment. And I got in there and said, here, let me look at it for a day. Like, let me drive the bus for a day. Let me see how it goes. I got it rocking to 32 cans a minute after that, and we were having very little issues because I figured out that it was the head space in the tank impacted the pump, which impacted the amount of wine that could go into the can as it's going up and down, just filling them. It was fun to figure that out. But yeah, canning lines is a little bit of a different realm, and it still has a stigma too, like the capsule versus cork debate with some of those. But yeah, a stigma of canned wine. What used to happen before is that cheaper wines would go into cans, and the lower quality meant that people didn't like them as much. So then the price went down. So then all those. The reason we started doing the cans is because we live in Colorado, and you want to hike, or you want to bike, or you want to go to a picnic somewhere, or you want to golf, you want to go rafting, any of those things. Having it in a can is a little bit easier.
Sense.
That's why we did it. But the thing is, you want a good wine in a can, right? You don't want something crazy. So our canned wines are meant to be those like go and enjoy. It's a white wine. Expect a white wine. It's not going to excel in any of those white wine characteristics, because our white can is Sauvignon Blanc, Chardonnay, and Pinot Gris. So you get a little bit of all of them without exceeding in any direction. And our red can is similar.
Are boxes coming next?
I don't think boxes will come with us next.
Okay. Because there are some higher end boxes now too.
Yeah. I have nothing against them. I just think that it's more, the traditional side. A lot of wine, and I think there was an experiment done a while ago that showed that people tended to rate the wine in a bottle with a fancier looking label better than the one in the can or in the box.
Eating with your eyes, right? Drinking with your eyes. Yeah.
Part of it's there. I mean, the stigma or the issues with screw top wines right now too. I get a question about that on every single tour I do. This morning I had 9 people on a tour, and as soon as I got down to the cave, hey, why do you use screw tops? Because there's a stigma with it that it's cheaper quality. It was the cheaper option to an enclosed wine, which a long time ago it was. It was a cheaper way to do it. It was a way to just seal it because it was a lot cheaper than corks, and off with it you go. So cheaper wines started getting into it. But the reason why corks are really used is because of that semi-permeable, the porousness of the cork. It allows oxygen to get into the bottle to let the bottle age over time. So then they have a Stelvin enclosure on it that has a semi-permeable surface on the top. If you have the bottles there with you, you can actually take off the cap and see that there's a little white pad on it that allows microliters of oxygen into the bottle at a controlled rate, just like a cork would.
Okay.
You see that little pad on there?
Yeah.
So that will let in oxygen and let a bottle age the same way a cork will, but we know that that's not going to fail.
And then, so this is my mind thought during this whole conversation where we're talking about corks and mindset, bottle caps. Mm-hmm. I was like, if you have a cork, sometimes you get that person that opens it too much, and you got cork in the wine, and you're like, that kind of sucks. Mm-hmm. And then storing it in the fridge, because sometimes your shelves aren't tall enough where you put the cork back on it. It doesn't fit in your fridge. So you're like, then you got to do it sideways, but the cork's not on there. Then it leaks out in the fridge. So nowadays, this is my whole mindset. I go into the liquor stores now, and I literally look for wines that have the caps, because I'm like, I can store it. I can keep it fresh. This is still a good bottle of wine. I can put a cap back on it, put it back in my fridge, and have it stand up straight.
Mm-hmm. There is one thing to think about with that to a degree, though, because I do get questions like, how long does it last? It's a really general question I get, is that you can put the cap back on, right? Or put the cork back in, but the wine is never going to be the same from that point. Because as soon as you opened it, it's going to start oxidizing at a macro rate instead of a micro rate. You can store it, basically, but like white wines, a rule of thumb is kind of like 2-3 days after opening. Right. Red wines, 5 to 7 generally. It depends on the varietal. It depends on, Pinot Noirs won't go as long because it's a little bit of a lighter grape, while Cabernet Sauvignons, Petit Verdot are heavier, so they may last a little bit better. But we're talking days, not weeks or years or months.
So I just look at it as an excuse. I can drink 2 bottles of wine a night because I opened 2 bottles of wine.
Yeah. You don't want it to go bad.
I had to. It was going to be wasted money unless I drank it.
I was told.
Yeah. Keenan told us. Now we have license to do it.
I stayed at a vineyard. We did wine country in Texas one time, and talking about a place that you don't think of wine, and that's up in Fredericksburg, so it's a different climate than Dallas. Anyways, we rented the they call it a Sunday house. It's where the farmers would go into town and stay on Saturday night to go to church on Sunday, and they had one of these Sunday houses on the vineyard. And we were out doing stuff all day long, and we came back and we found 3/4 of a case of open wine bottles sitting on our front porch because they had been tasting all day and pouring, and every bottle that had been opened, they just left for us because they were going to start fresh again the next day, so that those people who were coming in doing the tastings had a freshly opened bottle. And to your point, they're tasting what they would be experiencing and when they would buy that bottle and have it instead of just being cheap and now it's oxidized and it's going to be different in the morning.
Mm-hmm. So that's like great point with the tastings. That's like something we have at each of our locations. Is called a Cruvinet system. That you can think of it like wine on tap to a degree, but really what it is that there's this refrigerator with a glass door, and the wine bottle there's a straw on the back end that goes into the bottle. So we open it right away and put the straw and the cork into the bottle, and there's a tank of argon behind the system in the back room that the pressurized tank, as you open the tap, actually pushes the wine out the straw into the glass and replaces it immediately with argon. So your oxygen contact from opening the bottle for those 2 seconds is very, very minimal compared to, so we can leave it on this Cruvinet system for longer periods of time without impacting the flavor of the wine. So we have 3 Cruvinet systems, one at each place, but it's that level of detail of quality that we look for, like you were just saying. Because that waste that winery has, because they're missing out on bottles, those leftovers is a lot. It adds up to every winery.
Yeah.
So
I bet, yeah.
We invested in those types of systems.
Robert, I feel like we need to go see this place.
Well, we'll go out a day early when we have. I know that the 3 of us need to be in Denver in the kitchen for something soon here, so maybe we go out a day early.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Let's do that.
Perfect. Shoot me a text.
Or stay a day late. No, I think stay a day late because we aren't going to get our work done if we go early.
We'll get like a really fancy car and drive in.
Want to come back.
We'll be.
Ooh, we can get that
We'll be
yacht
calling
you
up
talked
Carl.
about last time.
Yeah, we're not coming back from the winery.
Had too many wine tastings.
This has been awesome having you on, man, and getting to talk to you a little bit more. Learning about what you do, learning about how you do what you do from a chef's perspective and from a food service perspective. The wine obviously plays such an integral part in most restaurants and most food service. When you're trying to run an operation, I think it's invaluable information and knowledge that all of us can have. So it was very, very nice to listen to you and learn about it all. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you guys very much for having me on. And I mean, I know we don't have enough time in this particular session, but I wouldn't mind coming back on as we get closer towards the opening of the museum, because I want to ask you guys your questions, like coming from me, not knowing anything on that side of things to a degree. I want to ask you guys what you guys would see. I admit there's tons of stuff I don't know out there about random things, and food and wine should be one that I do know more and get to know more about. So wouldn't mind tapping your guys' brains.
Oh, perfect idea. Yeah. To Ryan's point, then we load all of this podcast gear in Luke's truck. Well, Luke, maybe your wife's car.
Yeah.
And your wife's car.
Get my wife's car.
And,
Yeah,
and the three of us go out there and we do the podcast from the new building.
Dude, Robert, that's such a good idea, because we could do like a dinner too for him.
Yeah, that'd be amazing. I'll take
do
that.
a podcast.
Yeah.
And the 3 of us could cook
any night.
And then they could do a wine pairing with it.
Right.
I'd love that.
There you go.
That'd be
and
so much
then
fun.
then we take pictures and it goes on your website for your recipe. And see, now we're going full circle here.
That was perfect. Perfect synergy.
This is right.
I love it. Anytime. I think we should do it.
That was a really great conversation with Keenan. We talked about a lot of things that I wouldn't even thought we would have covered today. But his wealth of knowledge is just quite amazing.
I loved his story of when he like graduated and got the bottle of champagne. That was good. That was a great story of how he got into the business of wine.
So, I mean, I'm lucky enough that I actually got to meet his parents, so Scott and Teresa, and have been working on a project with them. And actually, before this podcast recording, they drove down from Palisades down to Denver and brought a case of wine for all 3 of us to enjoy while we did the podcast. But I don't think they realized that only I'm in Denver. So I just got a case of wine that I get to hoard to myself. You guys get none of it. Good luck.
There better be some of that the next time the 3 of us are in town.
This is actually grape juice I'm drinking right now.
Yeah.
so that we could fit the bill, Luke.
I don't think there'll be anything left. But anyways.
Carl doesn't like wine, does he? So you don't even have to give Carl a bottle.
No, I could just keep it all for myself.
You know so much about wine in different regions, but it's fun hearing about Colorado because it's such a climate where you don't think good wine comes from.
Well, and like working in restaurants in Colorado for as long as I have, I mean, I don't know. It's kind of shit talking that happens about wine that's grown here and produced here in this state.
100%.
Yeah, I never even knew that wine was grown there, until you told me that this winery, and you're like, no, it's good.
And it was incredible.
Well, until I moved to Arizona, I had no idea wine was grown in Arizona,
Right.
because you think it's only desert, but there are special microclimates. And again, before I got that wine from my friend in Texas and, thought it was actually good and decided to do wine country out there, I'm like, Texas wine? What the fuck is this?
Isn't that crazy? Like, what person figures out how to fucking grow a wine in Texas and Denver? Like, I'm gonna put these grapes here and see what happens.
Well, but you have to look at, the parallel that it's at, the level of elevation and all that. And there's probably somewhere in the world that wine is being grown in a very similar climate. So
Right.
yeah, you could do it, as long as the ground is also that where it's, not overly wet and it's kind of, it makes sense. You don't want good ground for vines.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to us figuring out how to do a dinner up there. I think that'd be super fun.
I think that'd be really fun. Robert, it's up to you.
We just need somebody to sign the check.
I mean, you're literally our boss, so.
Cheers to that.
Oh, he left. He's like, fuck this. No, I gotta do something different. Cool, look, I'll come out on my own. Me and you can do it.
Sweet. Sounds good.